I'm going to step back in a moment here with some of the slides. And I know we were talking pre-show here specifically about, why we're doing this second part in this two-part series. The first part was really focused on high-level myth busting, leveraging NPI numbers, billing codes. And this is the second part. So if you haven't watched the first part, that's okay. There's a link in the comment section of this post. So check it out. You don't necessarily need to watch that whole first one just to be able to ready to watch this second part. The second part's getting a little bit more specific in case studies, KPIs, how you should be setting up these campaigns, thinking about what sort of data you may have as well. But essentially what we want to be able to do is showcase a little bit more in depth. I know Sean took some time to put some case studies together. Essentially, we've got 3 different case studies that we want to dig into and showcase a variety of different niche HCPs that we can target. And before we get into that, I just wanted to give high-level overview on how the NPI targeting works when it comes to leveraging NPI numbers and or billing codes. So essentially, you may be familiar with NPI numbers. It's National Provider Identifier. It's data that we have access to, and we have access to it through a couple different partners. And so we're mining this data to be able to understand a variety of different niche HCPs. And as it happens, we're working with a lot of clients right now that are targeting a couple different major oncology conferences, such as like AACR and ASCO. And so we're in depth working with them, with those clients, to really come through with some nice campaigns to influence medical oncologists. So the example that you see up here on the screen is specifically a niche HCP for medical oncologists. But as we'll get into, it doesn't have to be obviously a medical oncologist or oncologist. As long as they're using an NPI number, that's a unique identifier. So as long as they're using that number, we can reach them digitally online. So essentially how it works is, let's say they visit a website that has a logged in experience. I mean, they need to log into some sort of shopping cart experience or their email. That triggers our system to know, hey, that niche HCP that you're trying to reach with that NPI number is online. It's all one-to-one targeting. So if they're not obviously in that mix of NPI numbers, then we're not going to be able to serve that ad to them. So the specificity of being able to reach that specific NPI is very targeted, obviously, when we do these NPI targets. And just like you and I, as we consume media, right, we're going to browse several different websites. And I'm going to showcase a couple of the websites that we typically run campaigns on. But think about it, there's like millions of websites out there. And so as long as we have that NPI number and they're logged in, we can serve an ad to them with your message about your solution. So again, think of it as like lifestyle sites. So news, sports, weather, finance, travel, any of those types of different sites, essentially we can reach and target that audience. Ultimately, the goal is to drive them back to a landing page or website, but it doesn't have to be that sort of like, traffic driver. I mean, it's great, obviously, to drive traffic to the website, but you'll see in a moment where Sean gets into the reporting to shows, hey, they don't have to fill out a form. They don't have to click on the ad. We can still get that information. So it's definitely very impactful from a campaign perspective. But if they're clicking, and HCPs definitely click the ads, Sean's going to reveal the report to showcase a lot of the clicks that are happening for some of these niche HCPs, obviously. But if they're clicking, they're driving that website traffic, which is great. And then we put them in a retargeting pool. This is just an example of, again, medical oncologists. Again, we're doing a lot of planning right now when it comes to a couple of major oncology conferences. And then this is the current database for medical oncologists and oncologists. So we tap into a variety of different data partners, and it really just depends. And that's why we collaborate with clients really closely to understand, hey, what's your goals? What's your audience? What's your solution about, right? Where are they in the buyer's journey? So we want to understand a lot of that before we actually put some sort of digital campaign together. And this is how it works. Again, let's say you're a medical oncologist and you're visiting, again, there's millions of websites out there. This is just a small sampling. So let's just say, for example, it's Fortune, Yahoo, Forbes, AOL, Food Network. Again, these are all lifestyle media websites that have those display banners, programmatic, right? It's a variety of different names that we call this type of technology and targeting. But the great thing about this too is it's cross device. So we may start a campaign on a mobile phone, but it's smart technology to be able to, if you have a tablet, if you're using a PC, and Sean, I don't know about you, but I know I have about 4 different devices that I toggle back and forth between. So that's the beauty thing about this campaign is it's obviously cross device. And the other great thing about this is, we're always optimizing. We're always looking at how we can maximize ROI for these digital campaigns, and they're digital. So we can either look at the audience, we can look at where we're driving the traffic to, if it's a landing page or website. We can also look at the different ad formats, right? And there's different screens, there's different ad sizes, and there's a lot of other factors that goes into optimizing. And then, part of the campaigns that we set up, we're typically putting some sort of retargeting in there as well. And so essentially what we want to be able to do is get that frequency. Retargeting is an easy way to kind of build that in, right? We're driving that traffic back to the website landing page. And it's definitely a great way to do it because most people, and especially when it comes to physicians, they're probably the hardest to market to, right, Sean? This is not a consumer audience. This is not even a B2B audience, really. It's B to physician, which in my book is even harder. So most of the time, they're not going to convert on that first time. So it's a matter of getting that frequency up, getting that message up there. And so Sean's going to get into this a lot more than I am, but I just wanted to showcase specifically what we're able to do when it comes to essentially be able to do this when it comes to campaign optimization, reporting, those sorts of things. So this is just high level about what we're able to provide, but I know you're going to go through the case studies and be able to showcase specifically,
and we'll be able to show people the actual data, like what this looks like, and of course how powerful this is. So absolutely. Right.
Awesome. And
I mean, and you can see in here, I mean, it's name, address, title, and the address in there, as we'll see, I mean, that's the address of the facility that they're associated to, or their billing, or sorry, their mailing address, but also their physical address. So you can, I mean, the level of detail that you get out of this is pretty impressive.
Yep. And that's where I end, Sean. And I wanted you to pick up and specifically, let's get into these case studies. I know we had a lot of questions. People were reaching out after the first part 1 series. And so we wanted to get and specifically showcasing several different case studies. And I know, Sean, you went kind of back through some of the data, some of the campaigns, and wanted to showcase. And I know we're still talking about medical oncologists on this first example, but walk us through this performance comparison.
Yeah, so we saw some of those numbers that you shared with us earlier, Jason, of around 5,800 current medical oncologists in the U.S. that we could potentially target. So this is during a month period, and we're running this for a client. And as you mentioned, I've got a couple of case studies just to review because people are always interested in the metrics, right? Like, how is this really performing? What can you expect? This isn't to say that it's the same for everyone. But hey, this gives you at least an idea and a benchmark of where you might be, right? And in some kind of comparison. So in this instance, in a month period of time, we were able to reach 4,030. And when I say reach, this is confirmed reach, which means that there always is some extra, right? We talk about it highly focused one-to-one, which it is, but it's not entirely perfect. So there's always some data in there that we're not able to attribute back. And it's usually around 50 to 80% we're able to attribute exactly to the audience that we're trying to target. And so this says 4,000. It's actually a little bit more. It's just that we weren't able, for whatever reason, ad blockers, that sort of thing, that may not allow us to really tie it back. So it's at least this many, right?
Right.
And of those, we had 632 clicks. Not bad. I mean, think of, that's 600 more people or clicks and visits to your website, to your product page to learn more about you. And then the other thing that we do is they don't actually even have to click to be in this report. So they just have to see the ad. Once they do that, then we're able to match that data back to the NPI database. And then we use another third-party data source to be able to match their email address. And so we pull those emails together. So if you've got another campaign or outreach, or your sales team is out there wanting to connect with the audience, they can see how active or engaged that audience is, and they could reach out via email. And do so in a timely manner, right? When somebody is or fresh off of reviewing your content. So 677 emails, which is in this case a very small list. In my opinion, this is a fairly sized list. And then if you do the calculation here, we're engaging about 15, almost 16% of our audience, and that's 4,000 people. It's not bad.
Hey, Sean, let's unpack this a little bit more. So these 632 clicks. Now, I've gotten questions like this before too. One, obviously HCPs click on ads, right? They're obviously doing that.
Yeah.
The other thing too is you have a report to show those 632 clicks, right? To back this up.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, right? Like, you get a report. So unlike most campaign reports that you would be getting from an agency that you're working with, or even a platform you might be running your own ads on, you're going to get a number, right? And unless they actually take action, raise their hand and say, this is who I am, you're blind, right? Like, you really just don't know. It's anonymous, and the internet's designed that way on purpose. So right. We are being a little bit creepy in this. It's still private information, right? We're not violating any privacies or anything that would be untoward. But yeah, it's a report by name. I can tell you who those 600 clicks came from.
Wow, that's impressive, because I know and a lot of the other clients that we're working with that aren't doing digital, aren't using NPI numbers, and aren't using their own data, like, it's really, if they don't fill out a form, they don't know like what the results are, right? So this is fairly game changing, I think, for a lot of clients to understand, like, hey, they don't have to fill out the form. We know, obviously, if they click on the ad, if they're shown the ad, we've got that data. And the next couple slides, we'll get into examples of the data, just so people can see it, and obviously it being legit. You talk about the emails here, Sean, the 677, like, that was one of the main questions too, after coming out of the first series. How are you able to get the email addresses?
Well, email address matching is, that's been around for quite a while.
Okay.
I remember doing it back in, I don't know, 15 plus years ago, when email was the it thing really in digital indirect targeting, right? And
yeah,
you could really get email addresses. And the one comment I'll say is that one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're doing it in a very professional way, right? We don't want to, invade privacy or meet them where they're not going to be, at least in the mindset that they should be, to talk on a professional level, right? So what we're doing is we're matching up their we would presume to be their work or professional email address. And so we're matching up to their institution, their hospital, their medical group that they might be a part of. And that's how we're building in those email addresses. So it's not a lot of Gmail, no Gmails, no Yahoo accounts. And even though on the medical oncology side, we know that, like, the AOL.com account, the email account, is probably the one they're really using. But we want to be very cautious about how we approach that, right? And so those emails, we're just using a third party to help us match that up, which is available out there. So it's not expensive to do this because of that, because it's widely available. But we're also making sure that we're using professional email addresses that make sense to reach them on.
Yeah, like you said earlier, HCPs are tricky to reach, right? And I know you mentioned this before too. It's like sometimes they have multiple email addresses. Sometimes they're not checking it themselves. Other people are checking it. So, when we put these kind of robust campaigns together, it's, we've got the mindset of, hey, this is an omni-channel approach, right? We know you go to conferences. We know you do webinars and you do LinkedIn stuff, and you're doing a variety of different things. So this is a nice component, nice strategy to add to it to help accelerate kind of what you're doing. And I think it looks like, Sean, we've got 2 other case studies, right? This is just the first one.
Yeah. And
Oh, great.
And if you're okay with it, I'll mention one other thing about, just these lists, like, and who, and so one of the things we hear again and again is that it's, as you were mentioning before, it's hard to engage these healthcare providers, right? They're busy and they're very reluctant. If you've been doing this, you'll see they're very reluctant to give up their information, right? Like, even if it's a great case study, even if it's a great, webinar, they're pretty hesitant, and it's really hard. And we're seeing, just conversion rates in general online, just lower than general consumer level conversion rates. It's just what it is. That's how this audience is. And so, as HCP marketers and savvy marketers, we have to figure out better ways to make sure that we're really creating an omni-channel approach that is not necessarily just one tactic, but we're meeting them where they are so that when they are ready to engage, we're there. That's really what so I just wanted to add that little bit of context.
Yeah, spot on. So you ready for the second one here?
Yeah, let's go for it. So here's another one. So this is another group. So this was a kind of a specialized group going after emergency medicine physicians. So this was NPs, PAs, nurses, and practitioners, MDs, DOs within the space. And it was a very specific medical device that was around a particular procedural code. So we're able to really get niche into this, right? Using a procedure code or a billing code and build this audience that was very niche. And this is a pretty small audience, in my opinion, right? Like, we're trying to be in the multi-thousands whenever possible, just because the smaller your audience, the less chance that someone in that audience is really in the right mindset right now to learn something new or to discover this and really move forward. And so you want to keep that pipeline going all the time. But this, just so for comparison, this was a little bit different, right? So in this campaign, in a month, we were able to reach 2,000 of their overall audience. And we got about 53 clicks. So if you do the calculation here, the conversion rate is a little bit lower, but still very reasonable, right? Like, that's 53 clicks that, times that people are looking at your website. And then we were able to get, again, some email addresses, and the client's elated with this, right? They went from 0 to 168 in a month, right? Like, that's pretty impressive. And that's not, just purchasing a list off the shelf of people that you hope might be interested in your product. These are people that already saw your ad, and you can filter that down further if you wanted to say, hey, I only want to send something to those that clicked on it. So they, at least at some level reviewed your content. You could do that. You could totally do that. So in this instance, not as highly engaged as you might imagine in emergency medicine. These are busy people with really long caseloads and erratic schedules. So a little bit lower, but still, hey, I'll take a almost 3% engaged audience in a month period of time.
Yeah, these are great, Sean. I love the comparison of a medical oncologist, obviously. And I know it's also, I think we got to keep in mind the solution that we're marketing to, right? It could be a solution that maybe a medical oncologist, to your first case study, maybe they've heard of it, or maybe they haven't, right? And same thing with this emergency medicine physician group to billing codes, right? It could be something where maybe it's a new solution on the market, right? I can't remember contextually how, this campaign was running, but it's very similar to, consumer marketing, where if a consumer or HCP in this case, if they haven't seen your solution, your test, your data, sometimes they're not going to interact because they're not for sure, like, they've never seen it before. Right. So that's the other thing that I think about too, is if they've seen your solution, if they've seen the data, or if they haven't, right. That's part of the context here too.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really good point. Like, the power of display advertising is being a billboard, building awareness, right? And what you're paying for is that impression, that view, right? And we like to look at clicks because we want to see people engaged. But
Right.
really, the main KPI in display, and we shouldn't forget this, is impressions. It's getting it in front of people, and it's cost effective on an impression level, right? In comparison to other channels, digital channels and other tactics that you can run that are more expensive from the conversion. But those are going to be even more expensive if you're not warming up your audience, right? So if your audience doesn't even know that your solution exists and they're not looking for it, it's going to be really expensive and very hard to get those people. But if you've warmed them up and you're keeping on their radar or staying on their radar by doing some of the retargeting even that you talked about earlier, like, that is going to run so much more efficiently as a program.
Great. Are you ready for the third one, Sean? You want to get into
Let's
this
go for
next?
it.
Let's do
Hopefully,
it.
nobody's or people aren't too bored at this point with numbers. Numbers is the world I live in.
Yeah, you're the data guy. Come on, we got to get into the data.
So here's just another example. You can start to see how this plays out. So another campaign we're running for nephrologists. Again, a very specialized kind of audience. This was running to peds as well as general practice nephrologists. And we're in a month period of time, we're able to reach over 500 or 5,500 confirmed that we reached 5,500 doctors. And 122 clicks, not too shabby of a click-through rate. Super happy with that. If you've been in the display world, you might be surprised with some of these click-through rates. We're super proud and happy of these. These are real. For that campaign, that client has decided not to do email outreach, which is fine. So I don't have that number. We didn't do that, but we're engaging 2% of their audience, which, hey, most of us will take that, right? Like if this is the audience you're trying to interact with and you've got a 2% engagement, not bad. And 2% of 5,500, I'm not doing the math in my head, but that's not too bad. That's a few hundred.
Yeah, and I think the big thing here too is, yeah, obviously you're the data guy, you get this too, but for a lot of the marketers that we work with, they're sharing this information with their executive team, the leadership team, right? So we can send these reports every single month that shows, again, we're using the first party data, so we know we're targeting the right audience. We know from a reporting perspective that certain physicians are clicking on it. We can get access to the email address, right? So everything, and obviously kind of a no-brainer if you're doing digital campaigns already, but if you're not, right, this is data that's like trustworthy and proven, right? We can show all these reports, right? And we can send it to the clients every single month. And some clients really leverage a lot of this. And I know it's not up here on the screen, but I wanted to tee up the next, like what the data report looks like, right? This is an example of the
Nice and
HCP
small for
reporting.
people here, but yeah. But you
Yeah,
get
and this is
what it
not,
is.
yeah, Sean, if you want to talk through this, but we definitely like this is, I know you probably like covered up some of the numbers. Like we don't want to show like of clients report here. So that's one reason why it's kind of teeny tiny. But people could be grabbing screenshots anyways. But these are like obviously we've modified the reports. This isn't the actual client report, but it's a sample report, right, Sean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I will say, the NPI numbers and doctor names on here are real. You can go to the NPI database and check it out. It's real. This is publicly available information, so I don't feel too bad in showing at least that information that's on here. But this gives you a sense of kind of what you're getting. I mean, this is a literal spreadsheet with the information, so you can use it to import into your CRM, to import into your email platform that you want to reach out. You can. So one of the things that's interesting, because we are in the data world, right, that is maybe a little bit different than some of the typical agencies that you might be working with, is that we can match this up to your customer database, right? And we can do some investigation to say, hey, are we moving the needle? Who is ordering more that was already in your customer database? Who's been added to your customer list that, hey, we served ads to? At least some feather in our hat cap, right, of helping influence and build the business. So just an example, you can verify the data. It's real. It's here. and you're able to get, the doctor, their gender, their affiliation, with a hospital or a facility or a medical group. And then you're getting the addresses of their mailing, of their physical practice location. You're getting phone numbers. So if you wanted to do phone outreach, it might be difficult to get a doctor on the phone. But hey, the number's there. And then, of course, as you can see here, you're getting a count of how many impressions they have seen. So how many times they've seen the ads and how many times they clicked on it, or if they clicked on it. So you can also measure or have an indication of their engagement level.
Yeah, this is really actionable data. So we have conversations all the time with clients and we're like, hey, this is a great report you can share with your VP of sales, right? Because the VP of sales can go in there and, like, to your point, like, hey, it's got physical mailing address, city, state, zip code. So you can slice and dice the list. So if it's if you got a fairly large sales team or even small sales team, doesn't really matter. You can share those leads based on location. So if it's a certain territory rep, right now they have a lead list, right? And so if you've got a solution that you're just trying to get off the ground and grow adoption, right? This is a great tactic. Or if you have a legacy solution and you're really trying to grow additional test volume, like, this report's great to have. You can also, and I know some clients have done this before too, where they've got the physical mailing address, and to your point, emails are kind of hit or miss. They do like direct mail piece. So think about that for a moment. It's like you do digital campaign, right? And you go from digital to a traditional campaign because which physicians saw the ad. Maybe they didn't click on it, but you've got that report, right? So it's a great way to either leverage with the sales team or do additional marketing, right? If you've got their email address and it's verified, obviously clients are setting up drip sequences. They're reaching out to them for a next conference that's maybe coming up. So there's definitely a variety of different things. So that's great. The reporting's awesome. And again, how frequently do we share this report with clients, Sean?
So the standard is every month.
Okay.
But I receive the data or get the data every day. So we could do it as often as that if it needs to be that fresh. We could certainly do that. But yeah, by default, it's every month.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're cool with this, Sean, kind of went through the case studies. I'm sure people are kind of letting this digest, right? The other question that's come up too and came up afterwards is, obviously people are clicking on the ads. Once they click on it, like, what sort of metrics do we have after the click? Like, are we able to track conversions?
Absolutely. So just like in any other digital campaign, we're able to track the conversion. And there's several different types of conversion, right? So they can be more soft, or they can be more of a, lead form type conversion. And some of the soft things that we see out there is, hey, are they navigating past the first landing page? Are they clicking into a case study that might be available? Are they watching a video that might be on the page that either explains their product, or maybe it's some of the trends that we're seeing in video right now that we're also doing is, fireside chats, these longer format conversations that, maybe a medical advisor or, basically a host is talking to an actual practitioner and how they're applying it and how it's used and why, and some of the nuances that might surround it. So there's lots of different kind of content, and it goes beyond just being able to track it, right, Jason? So it's not just like, hey, 5 people saw that or 100 people went to that page and were engaged. We're able to feed that back into the campaign and then optimize the campaign for the audience that is engaging. So part of the power of that is that these platforms that we're running the programmatic advertising on, they have smart algorithms at their base, right? They want you to have really good really good performance, right? And so the more feedback you can give those platforms to, hey, this is the audience I really, really like to target to, because they're engaged. You get that feedback loop, and now you're just going to see improvement over time. The challenge is that you've got to run the campaign long enough. You've got to have a large enough sample set so that it can take its thousands of parameters that are behind the scenes to identify what's different about this one versus this one, right? And so you've got to have enough of that data so it can start to be smart and optimize on the back end based on the engagement level that you're seeing. So yeah, there you
Cool.
go.
Yeah, that's kind of mind blowing because I know in the past, it was always not necessarily manual shifts that you needed to make, but to
Yeah.
your point, like you looked at the reporting, let's look at the landing page, let's look at the ad copy, right? Let's look at the frequency. Let's like move those
Yeah.
levers how we need to. But it sounds like the technology's upgraded, it's more sophisticated now,
Yeah,
right?
and we still do all of that, right? So
Okay.
there's multiple different platforms where ad inventory is available. So we're optimizing those. We're optimizing by platform type. So some audiences are more active on a web browser on their computer, and others on a mobile device. And so we kind of tweak that and play around with it. And those are parameters that we can fine tune and adjust on our side. But you're right, like these platforms get very, very smart and intelligent behind the scenes on really addressing the audience that you're trying to reach.
Gotcha. That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, obviously conversion tracking to your point, it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's a great way to obviously track success of the program. So, Sean, if I'm an HCP marketer and I'm trying to figure out like, hey, I'm trying to take an omni-channel approach, but
Mhm.
how does this type of targeting, this programmatic, like how does this fit in the buyer's journey like overall traditionally?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely in an overall program approach, display advertising that we're talking about really here is really that top of funnel. So top of mind, it's efficient in delivering impressions. So delivering that billboard style branding awareness is really what you're building with a display program. So to build out a full program, you really want to build out your whole funnel, right? So at any step that makes sense through that buyer's journey, if you will. So this is an awareness base, but then there's the mid funnel and lower funnel if you want to break it up that way, right? In that conversion funnel. And I think, as I mentioned before, it's really hard to squeeze the conversion if you're not feeling the top of the funnel, right? Like it's not going to be efficient and you're not going to get as much. But if you can feed that top of the funnel and feed that down through the funnel to conversion, and you've got something to meet them at every step of their consideration process of finding out or buying, then you've got a much better chance of creating a consistent flow and a flow that is working efficiently.
Perfect. And I think that parlays to in a lot of the client's expectation to a certain point because most physicians aren't converting online, right? They
Yes.
need
Well,
they
yeah.
need yeah, they need to have either a salesperson reach out to them afterwards. So we're big believers in turning these marketing qualified leads into a sales qualified leads, right? So what happens a lot of times, this type of reporting is uploaded to Salesforce or HubSpot, and then they could get some lead scoring, right?
Mhm.
They can upload this as part of their monthly like
Yeah.
campaigns that they're looking. So if their system, if they've got it set up, and not all clients have it this way, but some clients definitely have it down to a science to be like, hey, let's plug this into our CRM, and then we get a report every month that's saying, hey, of these physicians that we're reaching out to, like here's the top 50 or top 100, right? Depending on the solution and the volume and what sort of HCP that you're trying to reach out to. But most clients that we work with, like the solution that they have is fairly complicated, right? So I know we have clients reaching out to us all the time to say, hey, how do we try to simplify like not necessarily our messaging, but our outreach, right? For a campaign like this, are there certain tactics that you're leveraging to help educate that buyer like digitally, or is there certain levers that you're pulling, like with video, for example?
Yeah. Yeah. So you make a really good point. Like at every stage, they're going to be engaged at a different level, right? So in display, they're doing something else. They're not wanting to necessarily really engage with an ad that because they're there to do something else, right? But hey, if they're on social media, they're consuming feed, they want to learn, they want to um, see what other people are doing and what's happening, right? And so, yeah, it's a great place to educate. It's a great place to utilize the video because it's easy to consume and understand. It's relatable. Those are great places to be. And then, of course, in search, in paid search, it's still alive for now until I don't know, ChatGPT is getting up there, right? But
Right.
for now, Google paid search is still a thing, right? And these doctors, they may not be looking for a diagnosis or direction, but hey, they're looking for a good laboratory. They're looking for the right test for or alternatives to a test or ideas for what's going on, right? As they educate themselves. And now they're seeking you out, right? They're looking for the right solution. So yes, it's important to be in different places. And I think on the conversation around creative, the other thing to think about is we looked at the conversion rates, and this is just in general for those campaigns and for that audience, right? We didn't even talk about the creative message, right? So in the consumer world, you're always going to see a higher click-through rate for something that says free or 50% off or win a free iPad, like those kinds of things. You're always going to get more because it's a value, right? Like you're providing immediate value back to them. And in this environment, obviously, it's a bit different, right? We're just trying to educate. We're just trying to bring awareness to what's available to them as a practitioner. And so, we can't offer 50% off. And to your point earlier, they can't even likely order it online, right? Like the best they can do is talk to a salesperson, which goes back to why they're not giving up their information, because most doctors, unless they're really interested, are not really ready right away until they're warmed up and kind of made a decision to really talk to a salesperson. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. And we tweak the ads as we go, right? Like you've got to keep it fresh. Depending on the size of the audience and how much you're reaching them, you really watch that engagement. And every few months, at least, you should be changing out those ads. You can run A/B testing. You can do progressive messaging even. So, for someone who's not a customer, now they clicked, now maybe they get a progressed message. So they're not just seeing the same ad over and over again. And or the retargeting audience, right? So if they've already come to your site, they've already seen the product, hey, build on some of that knowledge and bring them back so that they learn more, because we know that they want to learn on their own before they're really, really willing to reach out and connect.
Yeah, Sean, I think we can go do like a full hour just on creative execution, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, not like intricacies to it, but there's definitely some best practices. And, we don't have to get into it now, but, maybe we need to do a part 3 of this. But essentially, the marketers that are watching and they're optimizing their campaigns and they're maybe planning for some big initiatives this year or even into next year. And they're doing some usual things, emails and, obviously sales team, and maybe they're going to some conferences, and they're maybe trying to think about how they can incorporate this programmatic, this NPI targeting. What would you give as like a good starting point for these marketers that are just looking to get into this?
It's a good question, Jason. And there's a lot of triggers that can kind of, I don't know, start you off or give you a reason to start one of these programs, right? And there's lots. I mean, if you've got a new product, you've got a new case study that came out, or positive signs of a new study, a poster at a conference you're going to. Those are super expensive. We're talking about ASCO and ACR. Like it's not cheap to be there, right? So maximize it to its utmost, right? And there's also a level of just keeping the tap on, right? Like keep it flowing. Like don't lose that momentum that you've even started, right? I think that's one of the mistakes that some of marketers do, is this on off kind of approach. And really, these become very powerful and more effective if you can just keep it going, even if it's a slower trickle every month. Still keeping it on, being in front of that audience, reinforcing what you're doing, and then changing out that ad, like I talked about earlier, so that they're seeing something fresh and new, and seeing the progression of the brand and kind of what you're doing and how it might apply to them.
Great, Sean. That's a great example, and so I'm so glad we had a chance to talk about that too. The other thing that's that we got some questions on too, and want you to kind of elaborate a little bit more. And we're all used to retargeting. We've been retargeted for years,
Yeah.
right? Whether that's kind of behavioral targeting or just traditional retargeting. I know I'm a big runner and I get retargeted all the time with the Brooks running shoe, right? And that's consumer related. How does the retargeting work for like HCPs?
Yeah. Yeah. So it works very much in the same way. So the retargeting is really, you can segment those audiences. You can have multiple categorized retargeting audiences. So whether that's a general broad audience that just comes to like the homepage on your website, or a more specific audience that comes to a product page on your website. And once they go there, then they're in that pool, right? And you can retarget against them. And then you can also in another sense, you can do negative retargeting, and not to say it's negative, it's just you can exclude people from lists as well. So the power of programmatic is that it's almost real-time data, right? So the data doesn't get refreshed like every week or every day, even. Like, it's refreshed almost instantly, so that when you go to buy those running shoes that you've been looking for, Jason, if they've got it set up right, once you buy them, they stop sending you ads until they have a new design, right? Because at that point, you did what they wanted you to do.
Converted.
You converted. You bought them finally, right? And so stop running those ads. Like, you don't need to run it anymore. So you can do things like that. And again, you just use something on your website to indicate that, right? So whether that's filling out a form and you just want to exclude them because, hey, they finally raised their hand, we're good to go. Or you want to put them in another category, right? And serve a different kind of ad to those people. And continue to engage them. It all just depends on the strategy and kind of what you're going for, how that might align with other activities that you have going, maybe offline or in your sales process. You can use that to really custom build it based on your scenario.
Gotcha.
Hope that helps.
Yeah, what I love about it too, it's kind of a progression. I know you mentioned this a little bit earlier too. You're educating that prospect, that HCP. They may have not seen the data, the solution, your test before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, what's that natural, like, hey, they saw the first message. They saw that first ad, whether they interacted or not, who knows? We got the reporting, but if they did, then to your point, you can set those people up because they're going to get a different message, right, for the retargeting that may be a little bit lower down the education funnel, the customer map, right? There's a variety of different things we call it. Like, it's a nice progression through the buyer's journey, right? So maybe it's just like it piques their interest. Maybe it's like a video ad. And then that second ad is maybe there's a conference that's coming up, or maybe there's a white paper, right? So you can at least get them, educated through the process, through the display ads, but then also potentially you get them into your own database, right? So if it is a webinar situation, if it's a white paper, most of that you have to register, right? So that's definitely a good way to get them from paid media, obviously, to your own media, as an example. But the other last thing, and I know we only have about 10 more minutes or so, I wanted to understand a little bit more. Like, clients come to us, they typically have multiple agencies that they're working with. And if they are working with other agencies, like, how are you working with clients when it comes to that, when they are working with multiple agencies? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it certainly happens, Jason. And we've worked with a lot of agencies, big and small. We respect those relationships for sure. So we definitely collaborate and work with that. I mean, the interesting thing about what we're doing and getting so deep in this data and doing this kind of targeting and data matching and so forth, this is not what most agencies are really familiar with or willing to put in the extra work to put together, right? Because this isn't easy to be able to do this. And not that it's, we're so great and it's so hard. It's just beyond the norm, right? And it's beyond the typical targeting around particular interests, keywords. So contextual targeting and that sort of thing is usually the norm. And as those campaigns go, they can be optimized. But you're also, you're serving your ads to a lot of the audience that really isn't your audience. And that may be okay, but that's what we're trying to solve, right? We really want to be the most efficient with the spend as possible. So we can run this in conjunction with other campaigns and general campaigns that are going on, or we can run it in silo and separate it. It's really up to you. We can run the full programs that these larger agencies do, and we can help with creative. I think the place where we really don't, admittedly fit is in the branding, right? There's
Mhm.
so much that goes into, customer interviews and market research and all of those things that really help you understand your audience very well and succinctly, and then cater your brand to what that audience really is, needing and desiring, right? And that I think that's one place where our agency really doesn't thrive. We can help at some level of that, but really we do well when that information is understood and we know who that audience is. We understand what they might be interested in so that we can then reach them. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I know creatives come up throughout this
Mhm.
live session. And I think at some point, Sean, we'll have to take this offline, but maybe we do a third series at some point down the road
Yeah,
to
sure.
talk about creative. Because I know one of the questions that came up after the first one was, hey, these campaigns sound great. You've got the great targeting. You've got the right audience. As long as we give that information to you, you can kind of figure out the NPI numbers, those sorts of things. But then to your point, like creative is a big part of our agency too. We really look at a lot of the other historic campaigns that we've ran. We look at the audience, obviously, and we look at the different formats. We talked about video a little bit. That's part of the mix, pre-roll, mid-roll. We do a variety of different videos when it comes to that, setting those up. And so we have a whole in-house video production team here at the agency that helps with clients too. So I know that was one of the questions that came up. So essentially, Sean, like we're turnkey, right? It sounds like.
That's right. Yeah, we can absolutely get it done for you. No problem.
Awesome. Hey, I know we've got just a few more minutes left.
Mhm.
Before I plug the next LinkedIn Live, I wanted to see if there's anything else that we either missed or anything that came up like during our conversations that obviously you wanted to address.
Um, Honestly, I think we had addressed everything on our list that we planned on. So I'm
Okay.
good. I think it was really comprehensive. Hopefully, it wasn't too long and drawn out in the conversation. But as marketers, we're just trying to be helpful. This is an industry that we've been in for quite some time, and we're passionate about it. We're passionate about working with great physicians and really providing great care. I started my journey in this space, in kind of the HCP or medical space, by interviewing doctors and creating doctor-led education videos. And I think that's where I really started to gain that passion and understanding of where they're coming from as HCPs and the challenges that they have, but also on the patient side. And understanding the tragedies of life that happen to us and how we might be able to improve on that in some way, as we continue to evolve in our medicine practices, right? And so that's the place that we're coming from, and this is an extension of that, right? And wanting to make sure that we can be efficient. There's so many great technologies and devices, and diagnostics, and all sorts of things that are now available. These doctors are overwhelmed, and it's hard to keep up. So anything that we can do to help them when they're ready for it, that's what we're here to do, Jason.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%, Sean. We're not in this to just kind of wake up every day and go through the motions. You have to have passion for patient outcomes. And to your point, that's why I think we're passionate about this industry. There's so much new technology, there's so much new data that's coming out. Like you have to be on top of it. And yeah, two of those HCPs that are out there, it's not an easy task, right? And
No, my hats off to them. It's
yeah,
not.
absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. So, last little plug here, and then I think we're done for this live session is if you're planning for some major oncology conferences for like AACR or ASCO, well, we've got another LinkedIn Live that's coming down March 21st with Kelly Howard and myself. So I'm going to drop it in the comment section for this LinkedIn Live, but we've got another one coming up on the 21st. So if you're trying to plan for ASCO, obviously, Kelly and I are going to go down the rabbit hole with a lot of digital and video strategy. So I know we're excited to keep the HCP Marketer series going for the month of March. Sean, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. And thanks for walking through all this kind of challenging data.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. Happy to do it.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you
Sean.
setting this up. Yep, take
Yep.
care.
Bye for now.
Bye.